So we are continuing on the theme of on earth as it is in heaven. We began with this month with we have to know who we are. When we align ourselves with the great I am of our being, we are moving ourselves out of the status quo, out of the law of averages, and moving into a new possibility that has never been seen before. And so our superhero example was the magnificent Mr. Rogers. I love him so much because he doesn't have, when we think of superheroes, we have I think, somewhat of a limited idea of what that could be, but he was so not what Hollywood was. No one would have thought he's a great television star that they've made 2 movies about so far, and that he continues to inspire us with his gentleness, with his kindness, with his unique way of expressing that serves so many and continues to serve so many. And that's true for all of us, that when we step into that I amness shows up in a way that's never been shown before. And then last week we talked about not only do we need to know who we are, we have to know where we're from. And so Superman wasn't from this planet. And he knew that. He's always knew that. So we need to know that we are not human beings seeking a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings immersed in a human experience, as Teilhard de Chardin said. And that we are not of earth. We were not created here. We are spiritual beings. That is our identity. We are of the cosmos. And when we more and more shift into that I amness that is of cosmic origin, that starts to really get us into the energy that which we are is vast and huge and powerful. When I looked up last week how to say Teilhard de Chardin, it said on the bottom people he'd inspired, and he had inspired Brian Swimme, and cosmologist. And I had heard Brian Swimme speak 15 years ago. I could never remember his name, so as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's him. But that was right before service. So I've been all last week been listening to Brian Swimme. And we know when you read blogs and articles these days, they have like a link to other articles. This is my link. When you go home or this week, if you can look up YouTube's or on Spotify, Brian Swimme talking about the story of the cosmos. I was listening to him on the treadmill, and there was just times I burst out crying. The way he builds, he tells a story, and the beauty of what comes forth is I could never do justice to. And yet, I'm going to bring some of what he says here today because it's so inspiring. He talks about this birth of this beautiful cosmos and how big it is, the trillions of galaxies there are, and all the galaxies have billions, he said something like 50 billion stars per galaxy. It's so beyond what we can humanly conceive. And then to say that we're floating, all of this earth is floating in the midst of these trillions of galaxies. What that tells us is that the vision, when it's coming from the cosmos, from the divine I am, it is so much bigger than we could ever imagine, literally ever imagine. We can't see it. We don't know what it is. We can't describe it because it hasn't been yet. It is always making itself new. He was looking at was he studying the cosmos. He has his PhD is in mathematics and physics, and that's what got him into the cosmos. And as he studies it, he said, what comes through for me is passion. This cosmos is continually expanding, and there seems to be, as I look at the story, says he, that there's this passionate desire to continue to express that which has never been before, to try new things, to move out into new worlds. So as we open up to listen to the vision for our life, we want to be clear that vision is different than visualization. Visualization is when we are creating goals or intentions based on what we already know. So we have an idea of where we want to be, and so we create picture boards, ideas in our head, and that's great. That's a wonderful way of moving forward, but it's still based on what we know. When we open up to the cosmos, when we allow the infinite I am to birth a new idea through us, it's going to feel unfamiliar because we've never experienced it before, because we don't really know what it's saying when it's guiding us in a certain way. But what we will feel is passion. He was saying the core of all of our being, of all human, not just human beings, animals, plants, there's this core of this desire is passion and longing to create. This passion and longing to express. It's within all of us, and it's hungering and thirsting to get out. Why don't we do it? I know. See, hungering and thirsting to express. We're so glad you're here. Expressing. While we have a moment, Julian, can you close the door? Because I think some heaters are on. Thanks. We have this desire to express, and there was a wonderful point, and I've been listening to different clips, so I don't know who he was talking to at the moment, but they were talking about, the guy asked Brian, do you ever feel terror as you open up to the cosmos? And he was explaining that he went through this period of about a year or two where he saw the power of the cosmos fully activated on Earth in the everyday life, in the patterns, and he was watching it, and he would get so overwhelmed by it that it scared him, it was too much. And we see this over and over in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna, Bhagavad Gita is a Hindu scripture, when Krishna reveals his full nature, the full nature of the divine to Arjuna. He does a lot of teaching and finally goes, okay, you're ready. Let me reveal myself directly to you. And it's too much. It's so vast. It's so powerful that Arjuna says, no, go back to your form where I can handle it. And I've known people where they have felt the direct impress of spirit, and they said, no, it's too much because my body can't handle it. Yogananda talks about that if we had direct, that we have, basically most of our bodies are equipped to deal with like 20 volts of energy, and if spirit's 100 volts, it would just shatter us. You put too much energy in a light bulb that can't handle it, it gets shattered. So my belief is that sometimes we're afraid to actually really catch the vision for our life because we feel like it's going to shatter us. It's going to take us beyond what we feel like is even possible. So it happens in stages. He also talks about, and I love this so much because first let me just say, as we're getting ready for the new year, our topic today is Lashana Tova, which is a Hebrew term that means have a good new year, and they actually use it around Rosh Hashanah in September. And the minister who came up with that title, she herself is Jewish, and what I love is she took a tradition from a phrase from a tradition of hers and used it in a new way for the end of December, Lashana Tova, to have a new year. So when we're listening to what's for the new year. This month we have visioning on Tuesday nights. We have a 2-hour silent meditation Saturday night. This is a time to really listen and tap into what is it that wants to be birthed through us. And we get excited and we feel it, but there's also the terror of it, the fear. So we want to feel into the vision, say yes to it, the joy of it, but the terror also knows it's going to change our life. I keep seeing the babies back there. Babies bring new joy to us, new animals that come into our life, but there's no question our life is never the same when we have that new life. And we know that. We know that we cannot stay in what's comfortable and familiar when new life is birthed. So with expansion, as many of you know, comes contraction. And he was talking about the birthing of the universe, and he was saying it was happening simultaneously. That as the expansion's happening, so is the contraction that's creating form. And he goes into a lot of detail about it, which I won't even try to repeat. I saw George here. I'd ask you to come. The contraction is part of the expansion, and it doesn't. So it expands, it contracts a little, and expands even further. So every contraction leads to a greater expansion. So it's not equal. It always goes further in the expansion, but it has to contract. And I believe that when we start feeling that vision, often our first reaction is contraction because there's things within us that aren't ready to handle it. And that, what we want to learn is that is normal and acceptable. He said this beautiful thing, and he was talking about what's happening in our world today, because people are very about climate change, the culture, the divisiveness that's around. And he said, we think we're creating it, but looking at the cosmos has always been doing this. It's not a surprise that we're in a phase of contraction and destruction. He said, we don't want to ask the question of how do we stop the contraction or the destruction, and I'll talk a little bit about the difference. We want to ask how can we participate in it to create a space for the greatest creativity to come forth from it. How can we consciously participate in this contraction so the greatest amount of new life can come forth and flourish? So an example of this is, it was great because I was listening to Brian, and right after him was this a gentleman I never heard of. His name is Mark. I can't remember his last name. He wrote a book called It Didn't Start With You. And he was telling his story where he began to go blind. And the doctor told him just in a couple of years he would be totally blind. And so he shifts from the career he was in and to start really doing a lot of inner work. And he's meditating all the time. Fasting, meditating. He said, I would meditate days and days and days. And I went to a spiritual teacher, and I meditated for 8 hours to have this meeting with the teacher. And I met with the teacher, and the teacher looked at me, and he said, you need to go make peace with your parents. And he said, clearly this teacher did not see me correctly. So he kept meditating, and he found another teacher, and he went to go meet with the other very spiritually awake teacher. And the teacher looked at him and said, you need to go make peace with your parents. So he said, this time I listened. So he didn't know how to make peace with his parents, but he went on a journey, and that's what his book is about, and he actually looked at intergenerational healing, that not everything is created from just your own immediate childhood, but from your own parents' traumas they might have gone through, or your grandparents. He talks about it going 3 generations. It was fascinating. And that he gave an example of these mice who they changed their brain. It was research, unfortunately, in traumatic way. And what they found was that the trauma changed their brain structure, the DNA in their brain, and it got passed down to the baby mice. So they had the DNA of the trauma, even though they had never experienced the trauma. And then it went to the 3rd generation, but then it started to fade out. And then he quoted a quote in the Bible where they said it will go 3 generations. So part of his work is helping people deal with this generational healing. That's the contraction. Sometimes when we talk about living our vision and stepping forward and moving in this great limelight, this great new idea, we forget about the contraction, and so we are going forward as unhealed people. Contraction for me means healing that which needs to be healed, going back and reintegrating things that we've cut off from ourselves, we've split off from ourselves, things that we've rejected. Now, some of those things need to be let go of. That would be what he would call a destruction in the cosmic plan. This just doesn't work. We need to let that go. And a lot of it needs just to be reintegrated into a healthy and whole perspective. And what I love, the way he talks about it, it's happening simultaneously. It's not either or. We may have different callings at different times. To everything, there's a season. And I think of that now because for me, right now where I am, there's a lot of joy of the expansion of where we're going, what's going to be coming up in 2020. But I also recognize that there are people in our community, in our family lives, who are going through very difficult times. They're losing, people are in their midst of transition, or memories of people who have grief from people who have made their transition. Those are all feelings that we need to honor. We need to spend time with it. We need to listen to our interior world. Am I more in this moment, in this day, more in my expansion, striving for this new way of being? Or am I more in the integration of the past, healing old wounds, just grieving if I need to grieve? As I was saying last week, I believe that this month, because there are so many, last week was the celebration of Buddha's enlightenment. We have Jesus' birth next week being celebrated all over this country, especially and all over the world. We have Hanukkah starting next Sunday. We have all this energy of light, and the solstice on the 21st. The veil is thin, so whatever's going on for us in our own life is intensified. we need to honor that and feel it. I believe the vision is coming through stronger and more intensely. We can feel the power of it. That's what I love about listening to the cosmos, is that this vision it's not only not small, it's powerful. It's going to upend your life. It is going to make your life better and joyous, but you can't be the same because of the power that it inherently pulls. And we ought, at the same time, do the contraction, go back and reintegrate. So for me, there's no question. I've mentioned before that I was asked to write this spiritual autobiography. And I didn't understand why, because I had done, back in my early 20s, I had done therapy, felt pretty good about that, met with my parents, worked on my relationship. Everything felt very good. So the fact that there's been this intensity around write your autobiography, then it was clear it wasn't for the world, it was for my family, within my family, that it was supposed to be healing. And I kept thinking, well, there's nothing, I don't really feel like there's anything waiting to be healed. So I didn't do it for a long time. But it's interesting, as the intensity towards the vision for this ministry is intensifying, and as I'm saying yes to the ordination in June, and I see that as the birth, really, of the ministry, that I've been moving towards it, and the intensity of doing the spiritual autobiography is also coming up. And I haven't understood, there have been times what it was for, and now I'm sharing it because I think there may be a few of you who may feel this way, I don't know. What's come through as I've been writing it, it's not from the psychological basis, like, oh, this is what my parents did or didn't do. There's this, in fact, just to say, often when I journal, the divine presence, and as for me, that's Jesus, whatever the divine presence is for you, I was writing in this conversation, and he kept saying, he often would start if I didn't have anything to say, he would say, you're really lonely. And that would just irritate me, because it's like, why are you saying that? And do you have a cure? It's like, what is that? And so I never knew what to do with it. I didn't know, like, do I fix that? Why? And I guess being lonely never made sense to me, because I've been in the spiritual communities for 30 years. I've been very loved. I come from a family that I really love. So where is this? What is this about loneliness? And I'm saying it here today because I've had conversations with people here and out there of this loneliness. And as I'm writing this autobiography, it's becoming so clear how lonely I've been. And I think that's been what I've had to go back and reintegrate. And the loneliness was not because I wasn't loved or cared about. I just wasn't understood. And I know so many people who come to a community like this, it's because you've led a very unique path. You haven't followed the traditional path. You haven't followed what the people in your community perhaps followed. In my particular case, I grew up primarily with a family that was agnostic and atheist. So it was very hard and I was also the youngest child, so I have all the order of siblings. I was the last child. I matched that. So I was very flexible, very adaptable, always willing to, but the thing that I cared about most in the world, they were indifferent to. And I didn't realize until I was writing this story how much that hurt me. Never intentionally. I didn't know it, they didn't know it, but it was there all the time. That the thing that I loved and cared about the most was completely irrelevant to the people that I loved the most. And that carried on into ministry. As I started ministry, it was so hard to say I'm a minister in a family that just thought church and all of this was irrelevant. Not even bad, irrelevant. It just doesn't exist. And so what I'm giving my life to, so that was a loneliness of feeling love for my family but feeling disconnected. And then when I went to Agape, which is an incredibly beautiful spiritual community with Reverend Michael Beckwith, it's down in Los Angeles, very big, lots going on, and I was, again, so loved, and I grew a lot there, but still so lonely. And I couldn't figure out why. We're connecting in spirit, there's so much going on, there's so much joy, but there was this loneliness. And then I'm part of Centers for Spiritual Living, and I love Centers for Spiritual Living, and I love my colleagues, and I love my friends, but there was this loneliness. And so that's this theme, and what I feel the divine presence is asking me to do is, first of all, feel the loneliness. I think because the loneliness did not make rational sense in my mind, I shouldn't feel lonely. I got a lot of people that love me. I got a lot of relationships. I'm in spirit. I'm doing what I want to do. I should not feel lonely. And yet, it's been this emerging pattern that I've started to see through my whole life. And so I don't know if anyone else feels that. I don't know if anyone else struggles with feeling lonely or isolated within your family or within a community or in your workplace. You feel that you're on your own. And part of it was think for yourself, be your own person, follow your own path. All the things that we say, follow your own way, it makes you different than everyone. You're no longer part of the status quo. You're your own person. Mr. Rogers was his own guy. How many people were doing what Mr. Rogers was doing? Who did he talk with and commune with, aligned with what he was doing? So there became this, what's beautiful about it, though, is I feel that, and I stop resisting it and just saying, that's just what was. I have a new way of looking at it and saying, well, of course, I also know I couldn't have done it any other way. I had to have been me. I had to have followed my own path. I had to have listened to that soul presence within me to find the power and the strength, because where I am today is very clear on who I am and what I'm doing, and I don't need to merge myself with other people to feel like I belong, and there becomes this incredible, so now I'm aligned. As I've been writing and feeling, I hadn't reintegrated that, so that was always, as I was a minister, there was always this lone wolf aspect of being a minister. As I've gone back and seen this theme of how I continually do things on my own, it's like, oh, that's part of who I am. I don't need to resist it, but nor do I need to, like, oh, I'm a lone wolf. As I get to know who I am, I get to reintegrate myself. So the biography is also helping me reintegrate, where I had to push my family away for a while, not because I didn't love them, but I had to find out who I was. I had to push away other ministers and other belief systems because I had to find out who I was. Now that I am clear on who I am, I'm going back and reintegrating it, and the loneliness is actually dissolving. I'm creating deeper connections with my family in this moment. I've been having this incredible, we had the visioning on Tuesday night, and they were asking me we were sharing what our visions were, and my vision for my own individual life in this community were merging. This sense of deep love for this community has just been pouring forth, that the shifts are happening because I went back and reintegrated something that I had pushed away. Does that make sense to you? Do you see that in your own life? Can you see where you've been visioning and seeing possibilities, but at the same time there might be something that needs to get reintegrated from your past? That's not a failure that you need to reintegrate something from your past. That's just part of the natural creative process. We all have to do it. And it's always happening. That's what, as I was listening to him, the cosmos is in this process, but we're always birthing something new. And that's the excitement. Why are we willing to go back and reintegrate things that hurt us to be a place of healing? So we get these beautiful new babies. So we get a beautiful new life. So we get to feel this expansion and this growth, because every time we're in that expansion and that growth, we feel the extraordinary joy of the cosmos living as all of us. The joy that comes along with sacred holidays is because in that moment we feel the direct contact of pure spirit alive and awake as each and every one of us. There is a joy that cannot be spoken. There is a joy that we cannot with words, but it becomes so fully alive, and we start to be able to sustain it. It's not just a moment of joy. I love, Jill, you were saying it's not a day. It's not a moment of direct contact with spirit. It's constant. It's this constant, ever-present joy that is bubbling forth through and as all of us. So my invitation this week, as we're moving towards next week, as we're moving towards our good new year. Oh, I also wanted to say one thing. I love, part of the Jewish heritage is tradition. And the minister who came up with this title, as I said, she's Jewish, and she used it in a different way. Tradition. One of the philosopher that Brian Swim was talking to said, the way he looks at time is that, I love this so much, I had to say it. It doesn't, time accumulates, it doesn't pass. We say time passes as if we move to another moment, and that moment is over. Don't we say that all the time? It's a new moment. It's a fresh new moment. And he was saying time, which is a relative word, it is not the eternal, it actually accumulates. So tradition, we feel the accumulation of time with our own individual self, with our traditions. If you're born of a Christian tradition, a Jewish tradition, a Buddhist tradition, we feel the accumulation of time in that tradition. And it's not about either or, it's about both and. That as we're birthing in new life, the babies aren't birthed into new life and then Lindsay and Edith are irrelevant. They're integrated into the tradition, into the heritage, into that lineage that they bring to their beautiful new life. We integrate this vision for our life into our heritage, into our traditions. So whatever your traditions are, we're not pushing them away and saying no more. We're integrating, whether it's our family, our religious tradition, our spiritual traditions. We integrate it, both and. So as we're opening up to our new year, we open up to listen to what that vision is. It takes humility to say, I don't know. There's something that is so much greater than me, and I am willing to hear it. We have, this Saturday, there's a visioning. Our meditation, it's going to be 7 to 9 p.m. We switched it to evening, and it's just 2 hours of silence. We'll have a few little quiet Christmas carols in the midst just to break it up, but it's silent. You're coming in silence, you're going to be listening, meditating, whatever your meditation practice is, and then you can leave. It's 2 hours might be hard to sit, you're welcome to leave if you can't. But don't come in after 7. And we'll just deepen and deepen in that quiet. You'll feel it. The collective consciousness as it gets quieter and quieter. This is, by the way, Saturday, winter solstice, 21, shortest day of the year. It's the perfect day to just sit in the dark with our lights and listen. Listen to what's calling you. The cosmos is calling you. We are I could take this off. I was going to take this off in the middle and then I forgot. Say I'm human too. Never mind. Props. Listen. The cosmos have birthed you into form. You are not an accident. There's no one extra on this planet. That every person on this planet is essential, and no one has a small journey. Oh, I have to say one more thing, because I have to really say this. When we talk about the bigness of the journey, often we think about it in terms of human numbers, fame, money, whatever. I think of Brother Young. When I was in college, I worked in a halfway home for juvenile offenders for 2 years. And these were from thieves to murders to rapists, very severe crimes. And Brother Young, and I don't even know, I can't look him up because I don't remember his first name. We all called him Brother. And he was about my height, African American, humble. And he would come in, and the way he would work with these teens. I mean, I was in college, so I was learning what works, what doesn't work. So I would just watch him more than they loved him so much. He was strict, he was firm. But the love that he shared for these individuals, they knew he was the guy to go to, that they could trust him, that he was accountable. And I remember watching the Academy Awards one night, and one of the actors was saying, no one's more generous than actors. And I thought, well, there's a lot of people out there with superpowers. There are a lot of people living that cosmic vision. To me, Brother Young, he's living that vision. He's living that cosmic vision that is so huge. He doesn't know 30 years later that he still lives in my heart as an example of what it is to live pure, unconditional love in the deepest and darkest difficult situations. The cosmic vision it's not about human measurement. It's about the measurement of our heart, the depth of our heart, the connection that we make with other beings. He said always the passionate vision as we expand is about connecting with other people, with the universe, with the cosmos more intimately. And that's exactly what he did every single day. He got no fanfare. Nobody knew that he was doing it. He didn't get lots of money. He didn't get any fame. And yet every day he showed up for those kids in a way that I was in awe of as a 19-year-old girl. The cosmic vision. It's our heart. So let's go within as we pray and feel into that cosmic vision for each and every one of us, knowing that what follows that supports the vision. So we take a breath and we're fully present in this moment, as we know that every breath can only be in the moment, in this moment. It's impossible for us to breathe in the past. It's impossible for us to breathe in the future. We can only breathe in the present moment. And so we get very conscious that it is through the present moment that we open into the eternal moment. That this eternal moment actually includes all time and all space, all dimensions of time and space, and it is beyond all dimensions of time and space. It is beyond anything we could ever humanly conceive. It is pure, unlimited, unconditional love. It is pure peace that passes all human understanding. It is divine intelligence and wisdom. It is infinite goodness where there is no opposite. It is pure being. It is birthless, it is deathless, and it is fully alive and awake right here and right now as each and every one of us. We are each absolutely awake starlights of consciousness of who and what we are, that we are made of the star stuff. We are made of the cosmos. We are made of the spiritual I am presence that animates and pulsates as every atom and cell of our being, every organ, action, and function, every artery, every vein is flowing with the divine presence, this divine light. We are that place of pure, unlimited, unbounded light, love, joy, freedom, wisdom. It pours through and as every one of us. We do not make it happen. We are simply the witnesses of that which already exists. It already exists. There will be no more love in the past and no more love in the future than there is right now in this moment. All that the divine presence has ever been and ever will be is alive and awake as each and every one of us in this moment. We just stand in amazement and wonder at this awareness. There's nothing for us to do. It already exists. It already is. Its power, its magnificence, its joy, its wisdom, and we're it. We just bask in that. We just bask in the isness of pure life. And as we bask in this, we are aware that there is an inner calling for each and every one of us. There is an inner voice calling us forth into a new way of being, a new way of expressing, that we are not here to be the same person we were this past year. We are here to be something new. We are being called here and now in this moment to something new in 2020. We are saying yes. We open our heart and our body and our mind and our soul and say yes to the divine cosmos, the divine I am. Yes. To allow it to express in ways that it is longing to, it's passionate to express itself through and as us. It's saying yes to us as we are saying yes to it. It is deep calling unto deep and deep answering deep. The divine idea for our life is now alive and awake as all of us here, uniquely and powerfully. Nobody can do what we are doing. Nobody can be us but us. And as we celebrate the power of who and what we are, and we stand in the joy of that, any place within us that has been pushed away, we reintegrate, we marry back into our life with love and compassion and gentleness and peace and tenderness. Any areas of ourselves that we reject, that we do not like, we either willingly allow them to and release them, they no longer serve us, or we reintegrate them. We marry them into our soul and carry those parts of ourselves as part of our new soul story, as part of our new way of being on this planet. We are both the healers and the revealers of the kingdom of heaven, of the kingdom of joy, of the queendom of prosperity, of the queendom of beauty, of the queendom of wisdom. We are those expressions on earth. And as we know this about our life, we know this about all beings' life. all people, all animals, all planets, that everything is becoming alive and awake through this consciousness of oneness. There are so many people doing that work of waking up to the truth of who and what we are, and we unite with them here and now. We unite with all beings who are waking up to the truth of who they are. And as we do this work together, we surround and enfold those people who are suffering, who are feeling the separation of not remembering who and what they are, who are feeling the difficulties of being a human being in the spiritual experience, who are feeling the pain and the physical, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain. Those people who have voices that are not being heard. Those people who feel separated from the culture, who feel alone, that feel like nobody is hearing them. We surround this consciousness of infinite oneness with all beings, of love and tenderness and care. Those whose names we know and those whose names we don't know. The divine presence knows all. And as we hold and care for ourselves and for all beings on this planet, as we are reintegrating the pain that has been on this planet in a healthy way to create greater creativity, we open our hearts to those people in our lives who need this consciousness of love and of light. We hold Eleanor, who is making her transition, that she is surrounded in love and in light. And all those who love her are surrounded in tenderness and peace as they say goodbye to her physical form as she moves on to her next expression. We hold Michael Whitaker, Lucas and Noelia Whitaker's dad, who is also in hospice. We hold them in light and in love as they say goodbye. Knowing the divine love is infinite, that it is everywhere and it is in the midst of the sadness as well as the joy. And we hold and surround them in love as Michael makes his transition to the other side. And so now I invite us to call out the names of those people in our lives who right now could use this consciousness of love, of wholeness, of oneness. For there is, in this vision of the cosmos, all of us are included. There's no one left out. We are all in it together. And we continue to hold all beings in our heart and our soul, even as we all hold our own journey, our entire journey in our heart and our soul. The divine presence is on the field. We feel it. We breathe it. We are it right here and right now. It has heard this prayer. It has been with us as we have spoken these words internally in our own individual mind out loud. It hears us. It knows everything that we're feeling and thinking, and it is saying yes. It is saying yes to our healing. It is saying yes to our revealing of this greater and greater life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And we give a special thanks here in this room today as our first service with Sebastian and Joseph. We give thanks for these beautiful new lights in our community and for their beautiful family. The divine presence is alive, beautiful, and magnificent. In deep and abiding gratitude, we let this word be known now, knowing that as it has been spoken, it is done. And we say together, so it is. Amen.
And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. Amen. 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 And so it is.